I beg to differ. You know, this, manifests when the tidal wave strongly hits the people of that enclave.
Yeah. Dela, thank you. I think the point there is clarified. So let's get back to the specifics of how these running mates do impact the election. And Nanaka Kari, let me come back to you. You live in the U.S. where, for instance, Biden had to pick Kamala Harris, the female angle. It did play out quite bigly in the 2020 election that the Democrats did defeat Trump and the Republicans to win the presidency. Do you think the female angle here can play such a crucial role in the 2024 election, given that John Mahama has maintained his running mate from 2020, Professor Nana Jenopo-Kwajuman?
Yes, so you know what? It's exciting to know that Nana Jenopo-Kwajuman could potentially become the first Ghana vice president. But let's not look beyond what the voters are looking for. Now, again, Ghana is not just the Ashanti region and the central region. We have 16 regions in Ghana. And so when we draw in a comparison with the US and Ghana, I have to say, the President Biden picking Vice President Kamala Harris played a role, but it was not the major factor where President Biden became the president. Mind you, President Biden was the former vice president for then President Barack Obama. And so we have seen his work. And it's the same thing that's playing out in Ghana's political landscape right now. We have seen the work of John Mahama and we have seen the work of Dr. Bawumia. It's now going to be up to the voters in Ghana to compare the work that each of them have done. And even when it comes to their vice president nominee, we have seen the work of Nana, who was once the education minister. And we have also seen the work of Napo, the former energy prime minister. So I think that Ghanaians now, which is now a new generation, are now going to have the platform or the opportunity to draw the comparison of the work that each of the parties have done. And that will determine their decision, or that will be a major factor when it comes to who they decide to vote for.
Good point that Nanaka Kari you make then. Emmanuel, the records of both John Mahama as president, as well as the record of Dr. Bawumia as vice president, Tanaka Kari says is going to play such a big role in people voting. If that is so, the vice president also have their role. Nana Jane has been education minister, Napo has also been education minister, and they want to even compare. Now, it might seem to me as though the decision on who to vote will weigh mainly on the presidential candidate, and then the vice president won't have such a big role. Do you agree, or the vice president, the candidates who have been picked, both Dr. Matupoku Prempeh and Professor Nana Jenopo-Kwajuman, will probably have such a big role to play in this election?
Yeah, Kwaku, thank you very much.
Yeah.
When
please hold it there for me. I'll come to you in a minute. Let me give that to Ivan T. Innocent. Ivan has been on the phone. His phone line tripped early on. Ivan, the question is Professor Nana Jenopo-Kwajuman and Dr. Matupoku Prempeh, as well as the candidates, others, Alan Shermatin and all the other persons, if they pick their running mates, how big a factor would that be going into the 2024 election? Hello, Ivan. Well, I don't seem to have Ivan there. So, Emmanuel, please take that for me.
Yeah, Kwaku, when you're looking at discourses, like in terms of like these comparative analysis, maybe like possibly, like mostly people drift, when you're looking at attitudes, words that has been said and all those, all those things actually do not play out when critically looking at policy analysis or maybe like data in terms of like research, data in terms of election play out and all those discourses actually do not count. But like as we mentioned, there's been vice presidents who have definitely done better than the president under which they served. If you look at history, President Johnson took away from JFK, did great. There are a lot of tall list of that. Definitely, the Ghanaian will assess the records of each of these political parties in power, right? So you may want to look at what this person has done, what this person could not achieve, and all those. But I stand to say that the vice president plays a very critical role in every election. And as we are seeing in the US here, Vice President Kamala Harris actually was able to speak at BET and could speak to the constituent. Why? Because that is her representation. And there are some places that Kamala Harris will go that possibly President Biden can go, but may not be welcomed, right? So the vice presidential candidate plays a very critical role. And as I mentioned, when you're looking at President Napo's candidate, vice presidential candidates Napo's, candidature, the Ashanti region has definitely and critically always played a role in Ghana's election. The assertion that it is, the Ashanti region is now metropolitan and all those, definitely when you look at former data of elections that has happened, it's actually a very good place for the NPP to win an election. So you may want to also look at that. But then if you are looking at discourses in terms of policy, I think we have to pay attention to policy and how democracy is actually going to help us to, achieve growth. And that is what we have to look at, not looking at character assassination and all those. I think it's actually a very bad way of growing our democracy in Ghana. People attacking personalities and all. And as young as we are, I think that what critically we must assess is what we must be able to achieve with the democracy that we have, not doing these character assassination by, young dudes. To me, it's actually, very uncalled for. Thank you.
Oh, Ivan, the running mates, big call going into the 2024 election, and all these persons said to play such a role. How does Nana Jane, Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh affect the likelihood of their presidential candidates winning? Hello, Ivan.
Yeah, Kwaku.
Yes, Ivan, I can hear you.
Yes, please, the question again.
I'm asking you about the running mates, two of them that have been announced so far. The others, Alan, Cheddar, they've not announced their running mates yet. But
Yes.
how big a role will these running mates be playing if their candidates, the presidential candidates, are to win?
Yes, to begin with, I think they all add value to the candidature. Initially, the question was, what do they bring on board? I think the essence of taking a running mate is getting somebody who add a certain value to your candidature. Maybe you may have weaknesses, the person comes in to cover it. But looking at Professor Nana Jane, somebody who is coming from academia, and if you look at her transition from academia to the political landscape, I think it has been a bit smooth, less scandals, and looking at her experience within the academic space, I think she may, and looking at her track record as an education minister, she may add a lot of value to the take it of John Dramani Mahama. And if you look at the other side, which is Napo, where he comes from, that is the Asante region. Not traditionally and naturally, we all know the Asante region is for the MPP. So, but his inclusion on the take it will only invoke certain person within the base in Ashanti region. But as to what political capital he's adding to the take it, I think that is another thing that we need to look at critically. Because if you look at his personality as an individual, as a politician over the years, he has gained a lot of notoriety for many of the comments that a lot of public utterances that he's made in the past. Most being regarded as reckless. Some whole lot of things has been said about him, and he cemented that particular impression on the minds of people when he took the stage at his inauguration and made that particular unnecessary Nkrumah comparison. So I think there is a lot that he needs to fight. And you see, looking at the time we find ourselves in, and the kind of notoriety he has gained over the years, I don't know in terms of marketing. I don't know the kind of marketing strategy the MPP is going to adopt to ensure that Martin Opoku Prempeh becomes sellable. Because when you are tagged as being arrogant, it is very, very, very difficult within the Ghanaian political space for you to be accepted. Let me flip in the conversation when President Akufo-Addo was contesting in 2008. There was this impression of he being arrogant. It took him a lot of time, several years, until he went to Israel, pray against the Wailing War and a whole lot of stuff. A lot of stuff went in before his marketing actually paved way for him to become president of the Republic of Ghana. And to me, if you look at the time frame and the kind of political need Napo has carved for himself in recent times. And it is not as if people are making these issues up. In recent times, that whenever he speaks, the poverty of intellect becomes quite apparent. And some of the comments does not resonate with the base, especially looking at where Ghana finds itself at the moment. Now, you know we are at the crossroads, so you might want to pick up somebody who, to a certain extent, will have a certain cross-cutting appealing factor across the political divide. But the NDC and the MPP, none of these political parties have the exclusive numbers to win election in this country. So always it comes back to the floating voters. So the question is, if you look at the candidature of Bawumia, he has a lot of credibility issues relating to how far the economy has been managed and where Ghana finds itself at the moment. So you might want to pitch him up with somebody who will compensate for those weaknesses. But the candidate being added to him has a lot of issues, even more than the flag bearer himself. That is where the raw problem is. So I think that they need a lot of time and they need to do a lot of work in order to change the minds of Ghanaians. And I think that within the time frame, 4 years wouldn't be enough to do that particular. 4 months isn't enough to wash him clean, because in an attempt to wash him, because 2-4 did a lot of PR work for him by telling Ghanaians that he knew him, he wasn't arrogant, blah, blah, blah. Few minutes after, the guy took the stage and demonstrated to the whole world that he is indeed a verified arrogant politician.
No, but how is it arrogance if you say that President Akufo-Addo is the best ever Ghanaian president that Nkrumah doesn't even compare? Please hold it there for me, Ivan. I know you have a lot to say about it. Please hold it there for me. I'll come back to you again. We want to go around the table again. But Nana Kakari, you've heard Ivan make this analysis about the baggage that a vice presidential candidate may hold. Even if a vice presidential candidate holds so much baggage, how does the popularity or the personality of the top of the ticket, the presidential candidate himself, offset that? And is it even possible at all? Or the baggage can be so huge that the presidential candidate will just lose out because of the person they pick?
Yes, you know what? Let's not make no mistake. I think we all agree that the vice presidential nominee plays a role in the results, that the outcome of the election. But make no mistake when it comes to personality. Now, let's draw a comparison. This is kind of the same thing that's playing out here in the United States, right? We have the former president, Donald Trump, now running against the current president, Joe Biden. And back in Ghana, you have the former vice president, once the president of Ghana, who is now running against the current vice president of Ghana. Now, you know what? While the personality may play a role, trust me, it will not play that major role or become the major factor of the election result. Now, let me draw a little diagram for you. You have a former energy minister, Napo, as the nominee, and you have Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman as the nominee for the MPP. Now it comes to these two people also have, when you look at what's going on in Ghana, with the ordinary Ghanaian facing economical issues, facing educational issues, and facing energy issues. So now let's play. You have energy and education. The voters today are going to look beyond that tribalism. She's Ashanti, she's Fante. So he's from the Ashanti region. Yes, these are swing regions in Ghana, but the voters now, it's a new generation. The youth now are very serious looking at the critical issues. So you have the free education, SHS education system, which some voters will argue is now really the best. And then you have the energy crisis, which Napo was once leading the energy ministry. That again brings back to mind to the ordinary Ghanaian people, the doomsday. So they having the both candidates is a good thing for individual tickets, but it's also a bad thing because now they have laid out for the voters to do a comparison and contrast who is coming to do the good work. Are you willing to bring in Napo, who some voters will argue couldn't even lead successfully a ministry of energy? Or are you going to bring back Nana Nana Opoku-Agyeman, how was it when she was leading the Ministry of Education? So again, like I said, it plays a role who the nominees are. But in this case, you have both of them, Ghanaians, having the same issues they had before when it comes to education, economy, and also the energy crisis. And that will be a major factor when they deciding which candidate they want them to lead for the next 4 or possibly 8 years in Ghana.
Emmanuel, let me hear from you.
Yeah, Kweko, as I earlier indicated, we actually at a crossroads, and the crossroads mean that currently in the world, we need to deliver growth. I mean, growth has stalled all over, like the world, So the candidate of each of the political parties, definitely you may want to look at their attitude, character, and all those. But I also think that in growing our economy, in going forward as a country, we must move beyond these things, because honestly, over the years, these are the things that has actually slowed Ghana. The person is humble, the person is this, the person is slow. We need to look critically at the policies of these political parties, and definitely when they come to power, what they're actually going to achieve for us. This should be the act. This should be the utmost priority for every Ghanaian voter in terms of policy, because when you looked at the debates that happened between President Trump and Joe Biden, now the discourse has even shifted in terms of attitude of Donald Trump. It is not needed at the point. Now, Black communities are definitely looking at policies to be, the policies to be implemented. We are not looking at, whether Trump said this or whether Trump said that earlier. Yes. We're looking at policies. So I think going forward, what we have to look at is the policies of each of the political party, going beyond what these people have said, and also the track record. And I must say that, if you look at the track record of the vice presidential candidate, Napo, when he was the educational minister, being able to implement the very hard policy of free SHS, restoring all these teacher training allowances and all those, and compare it to the time that, Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman was also in office. You may also want to compare that, but the utmost thing to look at as a Ghanaian voter is look at the policies to be implemented. Whether you're looking at the 24-hour economy, whether you're looking at digital, economy and all those. Also, if you are to look at the age topography of Africa, we actually, very young, with an average age of 15 years. You may also want to look at the ages of these presidential candidates, whether they reflect the age topography of Africa. And that's definitely have an effect on Ghana. If you look at Ghana's average age, definitely around 16 years, are these ages of the two presidential candidates and vice presidential candidates going to play a role? Because we're definitely looking at even President Biden's age at the moment, people saying that he's old and he cannot act.
Right. Ampem, hold it there for me. Pamela, suddenly you agree with Emmanuel when he says that, listen, let's focus on the candidates and the message they sell, not whether they are arrogant, or whether they are humble, whether or not they are this, they are that. Focus on the policies. Those are the quite important things. You agree, suddenly, Pamela?
Yeah, I agree with him. Who mentioned? Was it Nana?
Emmanuel makes the point that, listen.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. And I go with him because, Ghanaians have gone through a lot in terms of economic hardship, unemployment, taxes, and we Ghanaians and the youth, if we are to vote, we are going to vote based on track records and good policies. It's not about what you just say or do, because if you compare Prof and Napo, even though they are not the main people on the tickets, but they are advising the president. Looking at that, we can also compare their track records that would enable Ghanaians votes based on that. And we, the NDCs, we are coming up with strong policies that is going to help Ghanaians.
Right. Thank you very much for those of you on Zoom who've shared those points for me. And let me give the last word to you, Ivan Che-Innocent. Certainly, whether somebody is you made that point about Napo and what he said and what you said Otumfo tried to do for him. But certainly, if people are supposed to focus on the policies and the programs of these persons, the perception of how they react to others is not so important, isn't it?
Kwaku, I personally disagree with such assertion because, individuals do not craft political policies to be delivered or executed when the government is formed. That obviously comes from the political party. So we cannot ignore the character trait of individuals who put themselves up for higher office. We are talking about the presidency that must come with a certain level of decency, decorum. The individual must present certain character traits because a single decision can wreck everything that we've built over the years. That is why constitutional framers insisted that whoever becomes president must be of sound mind, because that is very crucial. Every single decision we take in this country revolves around the personal choices and the individual discretion that that person is going to come up with. So we cannot just say that we should forego the personal characteristics and focus on programs and policies. Obviously, programs and policies do emanate from the political party. And as we're going into this election, political parties will come out with various manifestos, which may not entirely represent the view or the ideas of whoever the candidate is. But the entire political party may go into a discussion, a broad stakeholder engagement, come out with policies that they think can solve the problems, being economic, social, whatever. But the individual characteristics, to me, is very, very important. To conclude, let me say that if you look at what happened recently in Kenya, there is something that people are not paying attention to. The reason why Ruto is in this crisis is because of certain traits of arrogance he exhibited. Because when the finance bill issue came up, the people protested that if you look at the current economic situation in Kenya, it doesn't make sense for you to roll out new taxes. He did not listen, went to social media and wrote in a language that sought to denigrate young people. It is what infuriated them and got them to the streets of Nairobi. And in the end, what happened? But the president could have consoled them. He could have spoken to them in a manner that could have maybe lessened the tension and the pressure down. But he rather insulted them and called their bluff. And that single decision, that single display of arrogance led to that chaos that eventually claimed about 30 lives. So I've been telling people that arrogance has no space in modern leadership. It has no space in modern governance, because you need to be somebody who should have a cross-cutting kind of appeal, reaching out to people outside your political zone, to be able to enlist the strength and the collective will of everybody to drive the nation.
Right.
So that is the conversation that we need to activate.
That is the conversation we need to activate. I mean, really interesting thoughts that you've all shared with me today. Emmanuel Usweje, based in the U.S. Dela, I know you are itching to say more, but it's 7. We got to go out of here. Ivan Chanos, and you just heard him. Pamela Sairam, it's good to have you on the show. Good to have your debut. And Nana Kakari, definitely we should be having you more and more on the show. It's good to have had you connect with us to share your views with us. And this is how we end Ghana Connect tonight. My name is Kwaku Asante. We've been discussing the two political parties, the NDC and MPP, who have all appointed their running mates. Cheddar is expected to follow soon. Alan is expected to also do same in the coming days. How exactly do these running mates affect the chances of their political parties and their political movements winning the 2024 election? This has been Ghana Connect. We'll see you again, same time next week, Friday. The library is up next with Andy Dosty. I'll see you again. Have a good evening.